Kneel! The word didn't come from a king. It didn't come from an alpha. It came from a girl in tattered, mud-stained linen, standing in the filth of a rain-slicked medieval alley. To any passerby, she was just a peasant, someone the world steps over. But as the rain hit the air around her, it didn't land. It shattered into mist, as if afraid to touch her skin. Merlin Duhamel, the Alpha King who ruled the northern realm with a heart of cold iron, was currently dying in the gutter. His own high council, men he had called brothers for a decade, had just driven a wolfbane blade into his side. They stood over him now, 3 massive alphas clad in black plate armor, their eyes glowing with the hunger of a coup. They laughed when they saw the human girl stepping out of the shadows. To them, she was just a witness to be slaughtered for sport, a wolfless mistake. For 10 years, Milada had suppressed her aura. She had let the Blackwood Pack spit on her. She had let them drag her through the snow and exile her as a useless freak because she couldn't shift. But as Merlin's heartbeat flickered like a candle in a gale, she realized her secret was no longer worth more than his life. In the Northern Kingdom, one move is all it takes to break a man. But for a hidden Omega of the First Blood, one move is enough to shatter a kingdom's soul. This is the story of the Luna, the world tried to destroy, and the king who had to lose his crown before he could finally see the goddess standing right in front of him. To understand why a goddess was standing in a mud-caked alley, you have to go back 48 hours. Back to the Blackwood Pack house, a place that smells like wet fur, ancient wood smoke, and unearned ego. Milada stood in the center of the great circle. She was 19, but she looked like a child under the shadow of 1,000 judgmental eyes. Alpha Kale, a man who mistook his broad shoulders for divine authority, stepped into the light. He didn't see a girl. He saw a defective tool. "Milada of no lineage," Kyle's voice boomed, the sound vibrating the very iron in the packhouse gates. 19 winters have passed. Your wolf is silent. Your scent is nothing but flat human air. You are a stain on our bloodline. Can you feel the tension in that circle? It's sickening. These wolves pride themselves on instinct, yet they're so obsessed with raw noise that they can't hear the power humming right in front of them. Kyle thinks he's cleaning his house. In reality, he's throwing away the only thing that could save his kingdom. He didn't just exile her. He made it a spectacle of shame. Kyle reached out and gripped the Blackwood crest on her shoulder, ripping the teal fabric with a jagged, intentional tear. "You are useless. Go to the outer rim. Live among the humans until the frost claims what we don't want. From this sundown, you are packless." He didn't just turn his back. He kicked a spray of cold mud onto her boots. The pack laughed, a sound like dry bone snapping. Milada didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just looked at him. A long, level stare that made the hair on Kale's neck stand up for a reason he couldn't name. She packed her single bag, took her weaver's spindle, and walked toward the stone walls of the city. For 2 days, she lived in a drafty hovel, weaving rough linen until her fingers bled, just to buy a single loaf of bread. She was a ghost, invisible, until the wind shifted, until the metallic sting of wolfbane and the scent of bright crimson velvet hit her senses. And this is where the useless human starts to become their worst nightmare. Stick around, because the men who just kicked her into the mud are about to find out what happens when you corner a goddess. 48 hours later, Milada was no longer a pack member. She was just a shadow in a teal linen cloak, carrying a small bundle of firewood back to a hovel that didn't even have a proper latch. The city of the outer rim was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a bated breath. Then she smelled it. It wasn't the smell of the city, the rot and the coal smoke. It was the scent of a dying star. A heavy and metallic tang of blood mixed with the suffocating, bitter stench of wolfbane. To a human, it was nothing. To Mulata, it was a siren. Notice how she doesn't hesitate? Most people would run from that smell, but when you've been useless your whole life, you stop fearing the dark. You realize the dark is the only place you can finally be yourself. She turned into the alley behind the Weaver's Square. There, slumped against a moss-covered stone wall, was a man who looked like he'd fallen from a different world. Merlin Duhamel, the Alpha King. His ornate iron plate armor was hacked and dented, and his magnificent crimson velvet cloak was being dragged through the gutter, soaking up the filthy rainwater. Standing over him were 3 massive alphas, his own High Council. Their black armor gleamed like beetle shells in the torchlight. One of them, a man named Hakan, held a jagged dagger dripping with a strange, glowing purple ichor. Wolfbane. "Is this how the great king falls?" Hakan sneered, his voice echoing off the narrow walls. "Betrayed by his own shadow? Don't worry, Merlin. We'll tell the kingdom you died a hero. We just need your signet ring to make it official." Merlin tried to growl, but it turned into a wet, hacking cough. The wolfbane was paralyzed his lungs. He looked up, his ice-gray eyes searching for a shred of hope in the dark, and found only Mulata. The sheer arrogance of these council members is staggering. They think they've won because the king is on his knees. They don't even look back when Mulata drops her firewood. They think she's a fly. They have no idea they've just cornered a hurricane in a bottle. "Stop!" Mulata said. It wasn't a scream. It was a flat, cold command that cut through the rain. The 3 alphas froze, then slowly turned. When they saw a small, mud-smudged girl in a tattered teal cloak, they didn't reach for their swords. They laughed. "A peasant," Hakan chuckled, stepping over Merlin's legs. "Run along, little human. Or maybe you want to stay and watch. Your blood won't even taste like a meal, just sour wine and poverty." He reached out a gauntleted hand to shove her back, a dismissive gesture meant to break her ribs. Merlin watched, a silent plea in his eyes for her to run. But Mulata didn't move. She lowered her center, her boots gripping the slick cobblestones. And for the first time in 10 years, she stopped pretending to be human. Most wolves think power is a scream. They think it's the sound of breaking bone and the roar of a 500-pound beast. They're wrong. True power, the kind that lived in the first blood, is a whisper. As Hakan's iron-clad hand closed toward Mulata's throat, time didn't slow down. It just became clear. She didn't shift. She didn't grow claws. She simply stepped forward, into the attack, not away from it. Watch this. This is the moment every submissive Omega dreams of. She isn't fighting him with muscle. She's fighting him with the very gravity of the moon. Hakan thinks he's grabbing a peasant girl. He might as well be trying to catch a falling mountain. Her palm struck the center of his black breastplate. There was no loud bang, just a soft, hollow thud, the sound of a finger tapping an empty barrel. But the moon's whisper isn't about the surface. It's about what happens inside. Hakan's eyes went wide. his internal alpha energy. The very core of his wolf. It didn't just flicker, it shattered. The shockwave bypassed his armor entirely, turning his organs to lead. He didn't fly backward. He simply folded. 200 pounds of black iron and arrogance hit the cobblestones like a sack of wet grain. He couldn't even scream. His lungs had forgotten how to breathe. The other two alphas stopped laughing. The silence in the alley became absolute, broken only by the hiss of rain on the hot stones where Mulata stood. What are you?" one of them stammered, his sword trembling in his grip. He looked at the king, then back at the girl. He saw the teal mark on her neck now, glowing bright enough to illuminate the entire alley. "See that? That's the information gap in action. They're realizing she isn't wolfless. She's something so old, so primal, so that their modern alpha blood is literally curdling in their veins. This isn't a fight anymore. It's an exorcism." Mulata didn't answer. She didn't have to. She moved like silk through water, one palm to the second alpha's temple, a soft touch that sent him into a dreamless sleep before he could blink. The third alpha turned to run, but the air itself seemed to thicken around him. Mulata didn't even touch him. She just exhaled. The pressure wave hit him like a physical wall, slamming him into the mossy stone so hard the masonry cracked. In under 60 seconds, the three most feared assassins in the Northern Kingdom were neutralized. Not by a wolf, but by a useless human. Mulata turned back to Merlin. The Alpha King was watching her, his consciousness fading, his gray eyes blown wide with a terror he'd never felt before. He saw the orange fire in her gaze. He saw the way the shadows bent toward her. And as his head hit the mud, his last thought wasn't about his crown. It was about the fact that he had just found his mate, and she was the most dangerous creature he had ever seen. Merlin Duhamel woke to the smell of lavender and dried blood. For a moment, the Alpha King of the North didn't know where he was. The last thing he remembered was the cold kiss of a traitor's blade and the sight of a peasant girl whose eyes held the fire of 1,000 suns. He tried to sit up, but a hand, small, calloused, and surprisingly firm, pressed against his shoulder. "Stay still, King," Mulata whispered. "The wolfbane is stubborn. If you move, it will reach your heart before I can pull it out." Look at the shift here. Merlin is used to being the most powerful presence in any room. He's used to healers bowing and trembling before him. But Mulata doesn't bow. She doesn't even use his title with reverence. To her, he isn't a king right now. He's just a broken wolf in a drafty shack. And for Merlin, that's more terrifying than the assassins. Merlin looked around the hovel. It was a weaver's shack. A single spindle sat in the corner. There was no gold, no silk, just the cold stone of the outer rim. He looked at Mulata. She had stripped off her blood-stained teal cloak. The teal mark on her neck wasn't just glowing, it was vibrating, casting long, rhythmic shadows against the peeling lime-wash walls. She leaned over him, her fingers hovering an inch above the jagged wound in his side. She didn't use a poultice or a prayer. She closed her eyes, and the air in the room suddenly grew heavy, like the moments before a mountain storm. Merlin gasped. He could feel it, a pull, not a physical tug, but a magnetic force reaching into his very marrow. The black ichor of the wolfbane began to seep out of his skin, defying gravity, rising in small, toxic droplets to meet Mulata's palms. It burned. It felt like his veins were being scrubbed with salt and fire. This is the human fingerprint of magic. It's not pretty. It's not a sparkle effect. It's raw, painful, and visceral. Mulata is literally taking the king's death into her own body. This is the first blood sacrifice, the reason her kind was hunted to near extinction. She's giving him her life force, and Merlin, for the first time in his life, feels completely, utterly helpless. As the last of the poison left his system, Mulata slumped back, her face ghost white, sweat beading on her forehead. Merlin's strength rushed back in a violent wave. His wolf, silent for hours, roared to life. He sat up, grabbing her wrists with a speed that would have snapped a human's bones. "What are you?" he growled, his ice-gray eyes searching hers. "No human has this power. No Omega carries that mark." Mulata didn't flinch. She looked at his hand on her wrist, the hand of the man the world said she should worship, and she simply pulled away. "I am the girl your people cast out as useless, Merlin. I am the human mistake your council thought was a witness." She stood up, crossing to the window to watch the torchlight of the city guard searching the streets. "The poison is gone. You can leave now." Merlin stood, his massive frame nearly touching the low rafters of the shack. He looked at the girl, the weaver, the peasant, the savior. He could smell it now. Under the lavender and the dust, there was a scent so ancient it made his inner wolf want to howl in submission. She wasn't just a mate. She was a sovereign. "I cannot leave," Merlin said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. "My beta didn't just try to kill me, Mulata. He's looking for the first blood. He's looking for you. And if he finds you before I get you to the Great Hall, the Northern Kingdom won't have a king to save." The air in the Great Hall was thick with the scent of betrayal and expensive incense. The beta, a man named Valerius, held the ancient iron crown in his hands. He was smiling, telling the gathered packs that King Merlin had been lost to a peasant's ambush. But then, yes, the heavy oak doors at the back of the hall didn't just open, they were blasted off their hinges. Merlin Duhamel stepped through the smoke. He was no longer the wounded animal in the alley. He wore his bright crimson cloak like a shroud of blood, his dark iron armor gleaming. But he wasn't leading the charge. He was walking 3 paces behind a girl in tattered teal linen. Watch the faces of the Blackwood pack in the front row. They recognize her. They're the ones who kicked mud on her boots 2 days ago. Look at their jaws drop. They're waiting for the king to order her execution for being near him. But they're about to receive a lesson in true sovereignty. Valerius screamed for the guards to attack, but as Mulata stepped onto the stone dais, her orange eyes flared. The moon's whisper rippled through the hall, not as a strike, but as a command. Every wolf in the room, from the lowest Omega to the highest Alpha, felt their knees buckle. It wasn't magic. It was the first blood calling them to heel. Merlin didn't move for his throne. Instead, in front of every pack leader in the north, the Alpha King of the Northern Realm did the unthinkable. He removed his gauntlet, dropped to one knee, and bowed his head to the human peasant. "The Northern Kingdom does not belong to me," Merlin's voice roared, echoing into every corner of the silent hall. "It belongs to the guardian of the moon vault. It belongs to my mate. It belongs to Mulata. This is the moment. The useless girl is now the most powerful person in the world. But look at the back of the hall. The moon vault, the ancient stone seal behind the throne, just cracked. A teal light is leaking out. The traitors are dead, but the real war, it's just beginning." Mulata didn't look at the crown. She looked at the crack in the vault. She knew the secret she'd hidden for 10 years was only the beginning. The world had tried to break her, but all they had done was wake a goddess. If you're still here, it's because you know that real power isn't about the roars. It's about the quiet strength that survives the storm. Mulata's story is far from over. The moon vault is open, and the north will never be the same. Subscribe and join First Blood, because next week, we find out what Merlin is willing to sacrifice to keep his goddess on the throne. My name is Pauline, and the moon is watching.